Every professional worth his or her salt knows that demonstrating executive presence is important for their careers, especially if they're aiming at a leadership position. But what about toxic behavior? Did you know that toxic behavior can actually ruin your efforts to show executive presence? Hi, I'm Vatsala Shukla, Chief Encouragement Officer at Karmic Coaching, and in this presentation, I want to discuss toxic behavior and its impact on executive presence. The topic came about while I was preparing my micro course on handling toxic workplace culture, and then it struck me that what if we ourselves are the toxic person in question? But first things first, let's have a look at something else, and that is a question about what does executive presence mean to you? Now, the reason I'm asking this is that I'm not looking for a textbook explanation or something you may have read in an article, but what does it actually mean to you? And that can mean different things to different people, and it is quite a difficult concept to explain at times. When I asked a couple of people what executive presence meant to them, I came up with a couple of answers, and the five main ones were that they wanted to walk into a room and command attention. In other words, command the place. They wanted to be charming enough compared to others so that they could compete for a prestigious promotion. They wanted to demonstrate gravitas and wow people even if they didn't know how to make it work, or they wanted to impress with their expertise. But most of them said the following too, and that is they desired more respect, and they wanted to have their voice, recommendations, and ideas heard and to be taken more seriously. So that is fine. They understood what is executive presence, but where do we go wrong in understanding executive presence? It's all about how you come across to others and present yourself. Basically, executive presence is a soft skill set. It's a behavior or competency that a professional can develop provided they're willing to put in consistent practice. In other words, it's not just for a presentation or for a meeting, but it has to be done consistently throughout. And most importantly, it's not about you. It is about how those who you are presenting before or working with experience you. So, I also noticed that there are certain behaviors which show that you do not have executive presence or that you're lacking in it, which are also quite similar to toxic behavior. The three that I have identified are that you speak too much and you dominate the conversation. Now, it could be that you're eager to impress and you don't realize that your behavior may be seen as lacking executive presence. You struggle to moderate your emotions or struggle to adjust to others' emotions. In other words, your emotional intelligence is low. And much worse, you are prone to outbursts, and emotional outbursts will definitely make sure that nobody considers you for the next position. Now, here's a short case study of my own. If you remember, in my blog post on how to peacefully handle toxic people with grace, I spoke about a new boss who had come in who wanted his own team, and he set about making sure that those of us who were still there had a hard time. He wasn't in the mood to fire, but he definitely wanted us out. And apart from being a bully, his actions actually ruined the ambience of the department, and all of us who had been working quite well together suddenly became backstabbers. And because our team actually interacted with people outside of the department, their activities were noticed by everyone. Suddenly, all of us started to lose what we had as executive presence. But the question is, how did we become so toxic? The truth is that we became fixated with the wishes of the boss. We were under psychological distress, and our organization didn't bother to either acknowledge or the address the powerful communicator, and we continued that way. Instead of focusing on the mission of the organization, we started focusing on what the boss wanted so that we wouldn't get targeted by this boss, who made sure that the targeting was done in open space. Everything became urgent. In other words, we stopped looking at tasks or prioritizing them, looking at urgent, not urgent. The COVID quadrant went out of the window. Everything was urgent, and our patience thresholds started to decrease, which meant that we were all snappy at each other and cranky. And we drove each other to exhaustion, but we didn't reach out for help because by that time we were completely intimidated by the behavior of the boss. The truth is that no one is born toxic, but toxicity not only hurts the other person, but it also takes away a lot from us. And according to experts, stress and undue pressure inculcates this toxic side in people who more often than not are not even aware of their toxic behaviors. Maybe that was the situation with our boss also, who had been brought in to achieve a certain goal and he needed to deliver. So toxic behavior could be situational. Now, coming back to you, do you think you're toxic? Here are 9 signs that I'd like you to consider and see if any of them resonates with you. Firstly, you criticize others for no rhyme or reason, and you blame them for delays or lapses. You squeal about others to your boss in order to earn brownie points. And this is something that happened with me with that same toxic boss, because one of my assistants who was so scared of losing his job started speaking ill about me to the boss, who was more than happy to get notes on what all I was up to, whether it was true or false. You start to look for negative in every situation or proposal, and you beat down people if they come up with an idea. You talk more than using the skill of active listening, and you end up micromanaging your team and keeping checks on them. In other words, you don't really let them function. You're so scared, you're so stressed out that you don't want a mistake, so you don't let them do their work. You tend to react aggressively when someone confronts you, and you insult others in public instead of having private conversations behind closed doors. In other words, you hit at the other person's self respect and self esteem. And you simply need to have the last word in any conversation or disagreement. That is the power of becoming toxic. So, my question to you is, considering what I've spoken about earlier, are you lacking executive presence or are you toxic? And if you feel that you have become toxic, here are the 3 steps that I can suggest to reclaim your executive presence and reduce that toxic behavior. Firstly, start with reviewing your behavior and making the changes required. You've already got 9 signs of toxic behavior. You've got 3 places where people lack executive presence and show toxicity. Make the required changes. Secondly, stop handing out permission slips to others who provoke your toxic reactions, because it could be that you're responding to them in the wrong way. And thirdly, use the guidance and actions that I've put in my new course, Detox Your Toxic Workplace. This course will show you exactly what is toxic behavior. It'll help you to identify and manage toxic relationships, a toxic boss, and also toxic colleagues. On top of it, I've also included certain other resources that will help you to build your resilience so that you stop being toxic and start focusing more on demonstrating true executive presence. And as a final word, I'd like to leave you with this beautiful quote from Osho, which I think sums up what you really need to do. And that is to remain in the world, act in the world, do whatsoever is needful, and yet remain transcendental, aloof, detached, a lotus flower in the pond. That's all from me. This is Vatsala Shukla signing off. See you next time.